What's good everyone, in this video we'll be discussing punch parries and how to play around them as a Steve player. So with Steve being a boxer, he lacks access to generic kicks. In place of these kicks, he has access to weaves, ducks, sways, and special stances peekaboo, flicker, and albatross. Saying that though, Steve does have some kicks. He has down back 3, up forward 3, up forward 4, and a special kick if you equip the Muay Thai headband. Steve obviously needs to condition those calves a bit more, maybe kick some trees. But those are the kicks Steve has access to, with the rest of his move list being comprised mainly of punches. So what does that mean? That means that going up against an opponent who has a punch parry, Steve is particularly susceptible to being punch parried, especially if your offense is a bit predictable, and certain characters actually have very strong punch parries, such as Asuka, Heihachi, Feng. Their punch parries launch, so being predictable and being punch parried is basically means you're gonna eat a ton of damage. I'll try to show a little example now. As you can see, Asuka's punch parry launches, and that means that you could be eating upwards of 80 damage if a wall is included. So that's very, very bad for the Steve player. And with most parries, especially punch or kick specific parries, there are two conditions that usually need to be met. Number one is knowing when the move is coming, i.e. the opponent's timing on when they'll throw out the move. And number two, knowing or guessing that predicting that the move will be a punch or a kick. In this instance, a punch specific to the parry. So with Steve's move list being mainly comprised of punches, we can guess with a high certainty that the move that the Steve player will be throwing out is going to be a punch of some sorts. So we only really need to know when the move is coming. We don't really need to guess as much whether it's a punch or not. And so this makes Steve particularly susceptible to being punch parried in general. So this video will be looking at some of our options for dealing with these pesky punch parries. Okay, so the first option we have against punch parries is of course movement and delaying the timing of our offense. If we can delay the timing of our offense, we won't be punch parried. If we can add some movement in there as well, we can potentially punish the opponent. So that's our first option. It's quite strong. You'll have to figure out what works versus specific parries and how to best punish them. But for most characters, just moving around their parry and keeping your offense varied and unpredictable will be your best option initially. Now for punch parries specifically, we can always throw out a kick. Remember, Steve only has this one kick for parries, and it is a launcher, so that's great. There's a lot of reward there if we guess right. However, with it being a kick and it being Steve, it is going to be very punishable, and I believe this kick is -14. So if you do guess wrong and there wasn't a punch parry coming your way, then you will be susceptible to being quite heavily punished. It is airborne as well, so if they did a quicker move, you can be floated. Another option we have is pab down forward 2. Now another thing to keep in mind is that knees and elbows can't be parried by generic reversals. So in most cases, throwing out pab down forward 2 is a really good option, as it'll beat punch parries and generic reversals. So that's a great option, and pab down forward 2 does launch, so we do get a fair bit of reward. And pab down forward 2 is fairly not very risky. It's only -10, so you can be punished for it, but not very heavily in most cases. Another option we have, and this one is not as obvious as the other options, is up forward 1. Now up forward 1 acts like an elbow in the sense that it cannot be punch parried and it cannot be generically reversaled. So up forward 1 is a great option. It's your low risk, low reward option for dealing with punch parries. It low crushes quite quickly, so it'll also beat lows, and because it acts like an elbow, it'll beat punch parries and generic reversals. So this is a great option if you don't want to be punch parried. You can just throw out an up forward 1 just to check the opponent, just to see what's going on. If you absolutely have to throw out a hitbox and you can't just step the parry, then up forward 1 is a great option. And finally on our list is while running 2. Now another thing to keep in mind is that while running moves generally can't really be reversed or parried in the generic sense. They act a bit like elbows and knees, where they just can't be reversed. So do keep in mind that while running 2 will usually beat most punch parries and reversals. Of course, an instant while running 2 in the neutral is a fair bit more difficult, but if you have the read that the opponent is going to throw out a punch parry or a reversal, while running 2 is always a good option to check with, as even on block it's fairly plus. So if they didn't throw out a punch parry and they just stood there, your risk is fairly low. Of course you can be walked and things of that nature, the move can be beaten somewhere. But if you mix it up with your other options, such as a pab down forward 2, an up forward 1, and a kick, then you'll have a repertoire of different ways in which you can deal with punch parries. So those are just the options that I use. I generally try to stick to just basic movement to keep the risk as low as possible, and just keep my offense unpredictable. But if you absolutely do need to throw a hitbox, then you can always rely on those 3. Your up forward 1, your pab down forward 2, which is an elbow as well, and your while running 2. And in some certain niche situations, if you have a big read, then by all means go for that up forward 4. Alrighty, that was my little discussion on punch parries and dealing with them as a Steve player. And thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.